Okay, it's a couple minutes after two. After two, a couple minutes after six. Sorry, been one of those days. Um, I'm gonna get started here, and as people join in, that's fine. But it is past six, so we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to our sixth virtual coin meeting. Um, all five of the previous ones are on the coin YouTube page. If you don't have a link to that, let me know, and I will certainly furnish that so you can go back and watch all the other episodes. Um, just a reminder at the beginning of these, I'd like to remind everybody why we're here and the purpose of coin. And really it's for education and networking. So I know this isn't the best way to network on Zoom. It's a little difficult. So we're thinking of ways to make it a little bit easier in the near future. But the education part we can certainly do a good job of. And so we have a couple of great speakers for you today. So part of also what we want to do is we're sharing our knowledge, expertise, and time, and to help investors and the community. That's the current coin mission, and hopefully we're doing that. Our next meeting is September 15th, and this is going to be a very exciting meeting. There are some changes coming to coin. We're not really ready yet to announce exactly what those are, but there's going to be some new ideas, some new leadership. It'll be the same general goals and purpose, but we're going to be a little bit more specific and intentional in what we're doing. So we're super excited about the changes that are coming. It's going to make coin better for everyone. And who knows, I know Sarah put in there that she misses hanging out with everyone in person. And maybe we'll be able to take some baby steps to get together a little bit coming up soon. That's the hope. So that's all I have for now. With that, I'd like to introduce Paul and Nick. They're going to take it from here with Floor Plan 101.
Hey guys, can everyone hear me okay? I guess you're not going to answer because you're on mute. All right, Paul made this fancy presentation, so we're going to go ahead and put that up, all right? It's really impressive, yep. Paul.
Thank you.
It's a good job you did right there.
Thanks.
We're
not going to get into it yet. What we'll do first is we'll kind of give a little bit of our background story, just so you guys know kind of where we're coming from, some of the experiences we've had, which has basically brought us to kind of where we are today. So
yeah, absolutely. And normally you see Sarah sitting next to me. Today's Paul. We've been working together for a couple of years now.
Yeah. And to be fair, I actually knew Nick before Sarah. So
yeah, over 15 years ago.
Sorry, Sarah.
I also want to once we kind of flesh out our exciting past, we're going to be diving into Floor Plans 101 from the investor's perspective. So I really want to kind of dive into what are some things that we can do as investors that are going to be thoughtful and not over the top, that we're going to see a payback on, and how we're going to attract more buyers, be more successful. We're going to talk about some tips on short-term rentals, long-term rentals, but specifically flipping is probably where this is going to help you the most. But in general, if you are improving any property, obviously the goal is to maximize the return on investment with the least amount of resources possible to get the best possible product that you can. So moving on, my name's Nick Karakaian. I'm a co-owner of Nestrs, LLC, which is a design firm located here in Columbus, Ohio. I started my journey actually at Kent State University, where I was getting my master's. You okay, Sarah? I was getting my master's degree in architecture. That is where I met Paul, and we actually did quite a bit of work together and got to be close friends over the years. I went on to move to New York City shortly after graduation, where I worked for a few firms, including Google, where I was a space planner. I did a lot of project management. Ultimately, I ended up leaving Google to get my real estate license, my contractor's license, and kind of all the building blocks that we needed to succeed in what we're doing today, which is quite a few things in investment in terms of flipping properties, managing short-term rentals, some long-term rentals, and some commercial development projects that we're starting to scrape the surface on, new builds, stuff like that. A lot of fun stuff that involves design work. We ended up leaving New York City about 3 years ago, finding ourselves in Columbus, Ohio, because of the tremendous opportunities that we were seeing. Lots of different articles were saying Columbus is where it's at. I also had a good family base here and some friends, so we made our way back to Ohio, and we haven't really looked back. So Paul, which he's going to tell his story in a second, but
so I of course ended up in Columbus as well, but after Kent State, for me, what I ended up doing was actually going down to Cincinnati. So I went there to get my master's degree. They have a wonderful program, and they have an internship program. So I actually had the opportunity to work while I was in school. I went out to the East Coast. I worked in New York City actually for a little bit. Then I went out towards the West Coast, not quite all the way, basically New Mexico, just north of Santa Fe. So I did a lot of work out there. And then for my last internship, I actually came back to the Ohio area. So I was in Canton, Ohio, doing work there for a firm. And, because of Cincinnati and the reputation that school has with their program and the experience you have coming out of school, I landed a job actually in Chicago right out of school. And during this time, this is when Nick was in New York, and he was trying to get me to come.
Come on,
Yeah.
Paul, we got to build something out here.
Yeah, all along, all through, basically after Kent State, every step of the way, Nick's always telling me, "Oh, you got to come wherever I am. We're going to do good stuff together." But I resisted for a while. I was doing a lot of high-rise residential stuff in Chicago.
How long were you in Chicago at that firm?
About eight to 9 years. So I was there for a while, and kind of what's up on the screen right now, this is like our typical stuff that we were doing out of that firm. So even within one building, we would have studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and then like our penthouse, suites that were always unique and super high end. And then we did several buildings a year, and like I said, I was there for 8 to 9 years. So I've definitely seen hundreds, if not, maybe pushing thousands of different layouts, just working within this firm. So it was a great opportunity, wonderful place to be. But then an opportunity came up in Columbus, and I just couldn't resist the opportunity.
I might have made some phone calls. No, I think the fact that Paul has been in a design firm since graduation, and I've kind of branched off to do other things in the industry in terms of construction and real estate, that we make a really good team. And we've brought in a couple others onto the Nestrs team that are also contributing to drafting our floor plans and making our designs better and better each week, really.
Yeah. So, we kind of started out, and I was actually still in Chicago, and Nick started to feed me some initial floor plan work, basically.
Yeah.
And that was about 2 years ago. So since then, some of the first things we're going to talk about is just some of the trends, the more recent trends. I think this is kind of within the last year. We've been doing this for about 2 years, but all of these trends that we're going to talk about are, more in the 12-month time range.
Yeah, I did a lot of I did a lot of bathrooms and kitchens, and then the drawings started to turn into entire houses and small commercial projects. So we are now doing, about 3 a week-ish?
Roughly, yeah. I think we've hit about 60 this year, something like that, yeah.
All right, so what are we seeing in these flips? Now, typically, these aren't new builds yet. We're focusing in some of these opportunity zones, and I mean, I have a house in Clintonville, we're in Old Town East, we're all over the place, but these are older homes that need a lot of love, a lot of times, and certainly in my case, mostly down to the studs. A lot of our clients are in the same boats, but there are definitely different strategies that investors have in terms of adding, with the square footage, the dollar amount that each square foot is getting now. People are starting to see additions and stuff like that, but there are definitely things you got to take into account in terms of a turnaround time. Sometimes if you're great at finding deals, volume might be your best bet in terms of profitability. I like to try to maximize each deal for what it is, even if it takes a little bit longer. So we do add an addition, and we get a little bit more thoughtful in terms of adding technology, stuff like that to the mix. But we can go through this list right here. Obviously, bedrooms and bathrooms are extremely important. So we're seeing a lot of Jack and Jill spaces that are popping up and being requested. that we're working into.
Well, and specifically with that, it's just how do you best use the space? Because a lot of times you get spaces on the second floor that are a little bit tighter,
Sure.
and you can't necessarily get in a second bathroom. So then you kind of got to figure out, okay, well then how can this space be shared to make it more efficient?
Right. So if you have a smaller footprint on the second floor, this has become really popular too. We have like a pseudo master suite where you have a master bedroom with a bath, but you also have a common entrance from the hallway to service the other two bedrooms that are up there as well. What else do we have? Central large kitchen swap. So in the olden days, a lot of these older houses have huge dining rooms, huge formal dining rooms this has kind of changed. The kitchen's become the central activity space, and an eating kitchen is more than appropriate. Some of these larger homes, you definitely see some formal dining still, but we like to swap the kitchen and the dining room just to maximize that kitchen, put in an island, have fun with the space, add a half bath because we're always looking for half bath, laundry. What else can we squeeze in on the first floor and bring up? You want to take the next one?
Yeah, I can. So another thing we'd always try and think about too is just your entry points. How you're basically circulating through the space. A lot of people don't necessarily think just how critical that is. So like Nick talked about, swapping the kitchen and the dining. Well, it's like entries are at a certain point and you might not necessarily be shifting those around. So then you need to start thinking about, well, how is that going to impact when I enter in the space and move from, whatever it is I'm dropping off as I come through the door, carrying bags and other things and taking my shoes off and so forth. So just being thoughtful about placement of things like where the laundry's at or the mudroom, so that it's convenient to get into the areas that you need to get into on a daily basis. I mean, obviously, if you start shifting stuff around on the floor plan and you're not shifting the entry points or the doors or the circulation, it can kind of impact how that space is working. So whenever we do a layout, we definitely take that into consideration, just how you're moving throughout the space and where those points are of interaction, basically.
Sure, and in those dining room spaces, sometimes we have those lower windows where we're going to need to put cabinetry. So we have to think about raising those windows up or moving them in general, because natural light is also super important. We're really trying to think about the experience of the occupant, and if you are in especially a smaller room, you definitely want to have a lot of natural light in that space. So we definitely got to think about that as well. Functional pantry. So I kind of made this up, I think. I don't know, but I'm going to take credit for it. You hear names like butler's pantry, messy kitchen. What else is there? Okay.
She's not part of this. Don't look at her. And this
Sarah,
is your
bail me
term.
out.
This is Nick's term.
Okay, functional pantry is a space that is going to be right off your kitchen. It's going to serve as a pantry, but you're also going to have some cool amenities like a beverage fridge or a wine fridge. You might have a sink. You might have a dog bath. You might have a washer and dryer. Maybe your half bath is also in there. It's going to be a space that's going to be super functional, and that's going to allow you to, attract a lot of buyers because this is what they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, kind of the note up there as well, you're getting more than one function necessarily out of that space as well. It's not just, it's pantry and that's it,
Right.
So trying to leverage and be as useful as that space can be to you, basically.
Absolutely.
So
You can even incorporate the mudroom into a space like this. So super functional. What else we got? I kind of scratched the surface on additions, and I just think,
we're going to do a deeper dive into the additions later on in our slides.
Paul created this amazing slideshow for us.
Yeah,
So
we'll actually throw some numbers on a project that Nick is working on. So.
And then we have post-COVID. I want to kind of just touch surface on what should we be thinking about in terms of design moving forward with everything that's happened in the world. How about a home office, home classroom, home gyms? Are we going to have the swing space that can flex into all these different uses as well, and that's separate from our functional pantry?
Yeah, I know for me it's a challenge we face in our home right now, just because I have a son that's 6 and they're starting virtual school, coming up. So it's like, where do we put him when he has his virtual lesson and all that kind of stuff? It's real thoughts that people are now starting to think about just because of their current situation.
And what if you also have to work in the house as well? You're not going to work alongside of them with one office.
Yeah.
Also, Income suites. Now, this is something that is not necessarily post-COVID, but you see this on the coast, especially out west. And there's a lot of opportunity out there to offset your mortgage with maybe a short-term rental or a long-term tenant. So that's something we can also, and they're also going to be separate from you, maybe in a carriage house. Something like that would be even more alluring today when they're not going to be part of your household, so to speak.
Yeah.
By the way, we are going to have a Q&A after this, so we're going to try to zoom through all this because I like a good conversation rather than a presentation. But moving on, this looks like
This
our
is the deep dive into the
addition deep
yeah.
dive. Okay.
And this is all you.
Yep. So this is a property of ours currently. We should be finishing this up in about 5 weeks. This is in Clintonville, and this back section right here on the house, each level, it's a 2-story addition that gives about 150 additional square foot on each floor. And that functional pantry I was talking about, that's what's on the lower floor. We have our laundry, our dog bath, our sink, our beverage fridge, our little mudroom area. And upstairs is a nice large bedroom with plenty of closet space. Now, originally in this floor plan, we had 1 bedroom. It's a 3-bedroom, and 1 bedroom was just a little bit too small. You could use it as a nursery or an office, but to really maximize, I want to fit a queen or king bed in every bedroom if possible. So what we did is we added a bathroom upstairs. We made the existing common bath the master suite, and we made that small bedroom the new common bath. So that addition became dedicated to that 3rd bedroom, which is a nice size, and I think it's going to attract a lot of buyers.
Do you want to talk about some of your numbers?
Oh, okay. So for example, if you have
the important stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you're in Clintonville, and this accounts for a lot of neighborhoods in Columbus right now because the market is just so hot. But if you're looking at $300 per square foot on the selling side, and you add 300 square feet, you're talking about $90,000 in value. So a small 2-story addition like that, I wish I would have looked this up, but I think it costs us about $26,000 or so to build. We did get very lucky in terms of the foundation there was already a porch, so it was already in place. It had an 8-inch slab. The foundation wall went down 3 feet with 2 foot by 12-inch deep footers. So we were already good to go for a 2nd-story addition. So we kind of lucked out there. If we had to dig that up and redo that, you're probably looking, another $9,000 or so. But still, a $35,000 investment, if you have the right team in place, is well worth a $90,000 return on the sale.
There was also an example when we were talking about the addition amongst ourselves, basically. There was a client that we had who they wanted to basically double their square footage. And, I remember Nick kind of talking with them, just saying, well, at a certain point, there's certain diminishing, there's a certain diminishing return on that investment, right? You can't just double the square footage and then it's like this magical thing, I'm going to get, $600,000 in value.
On a 4,000 square foot home where your comps are selling around 800, you're not going to necessarily get $300 per square foot on that property.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Paul.
All right. So the next item that we wanted to kind of dive down into a little bit is regarding attic conversions. Again, like Nick said, bedrooms and bathrooms are definitely a huge thing to consider when you're doing these types of renovations to these older homes. And just how do you maximize the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, so forth within the home. And a lot of what we're seeing is these attic conversions where you have to go in and the city requires a certain set of things to be shown within your floor plans and drawings.
Which is on the left hand of your slide here.
Right. So everything basically here is a checklist that we'll go through when we're there at the property doing the evaluation. And then when we go back and work on the drawings to make sure that we check off every one of these things that is required so that we can basically get the approval to have that be a finished space and count as a bedroom and not just an attic, storage space.
And actually, I recognize this one that we did. In this particular case, we had to build a dormer to meet the 6'8" head clearance to have it count as finished space. But when you start adding this type of square footage without even having to build a whole addition, you're really maximizing your property. So it just depends on, you want to think about the experience that you're going up there. If the ceilings are low, you need to be careful on how you organize that space.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to see some knee walls. But a lot of times when we're adding a master suite to the second floor, that third space is perfect for that third bedroom or fourth bedroom that you're trying to keep while you're still adding a master suite.
Well, and to add to that, another key thing to kind of consider is just even the joists that are holding up the floor. A lot of times they're undersized just because it's a storage space. It's not. It wasn't meant to be a living space. It's just an attic space.
Yeah.
So you'll have to go in and double them up, or do some type of modification to satisfy the city. So that's actually this next page. The dormer that Nick is talking about is over here, where you can see the original pitch of the roof is actually fairly steep compared to the modified dormer over here, which is much more gentle. And then here on the left is basically that framing plan showing that, where we're calling out the modification to the floor joists. And
yeah, typically you're going to see 2x6s in an attic space. So that is not up to the 2019 residential code. So they're going to want you to, at the very least, double them up. But in a lot of cases, if it makes sense, we'll take down the whole floor and put up some 2x8s or 2x10s that are going to be more than sufficient to carry that load.
The next thing we kind of wanted to get into here, we were going to walk through just a typical set of drawings. So we kind of did a deep dive into the addition a little bit and the attic. But then we just wanted to walk through what a whole set would look like.
I think this is a good time to talk about the city of Columbus. A lot of things have changed over the last month, 6 months, even a year. But a lot of that has come really in the last few months. I think at the beginning of COVID, we started seeing the 2019 residential code really being enforced, and a lot of times you catch a lot of the code that's required in your inspections on the back end, but now they want to see that drawn in the front end. I mean, when we first moved here 3 years ago, you could submit a sketch on a napkin to the city, and they're like, "Okay, great, have fun."
So I'm gonna flip through these pretty quick, and I'll just highlight like a couple of things on each sheet. Just even on the cover sheet, having a list of the drawings the city likes to see. It's like going through here, it's like listing out things like the depth of the footer, or what the wall is actually made up of, each individual part. They want to see all that called out. For things on site plans, they want to see what's existing, what's new, right of way. Sometimes for this house we had an addition on the back. So again, we're showing the existing versus the proposed. When you're going through and doing all the demo, clearly labeling what's being removed, what's staying, and then that carries into the proposed, where we're showing, again, what the existing is versus what the new is. So just clearly making sure that that's labeled and shown.
Hey, you mind going back for a second?
Yeah.
So on the demo plans, it's actually an existing / demo plan. So the city wants to see what the current status condition of the house actually is. And then we put in dotted lines what walls we're removing and what's actually being taken away, so that we can then show what's changing on the proposed set, which is right here. So on this particular drawing, these are those big drawings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have all 3 floors on one sheet, which usually isn't the case. But as you can see, the shaded areas, it's the original house, right?
Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
And the proposed drawing is the new addition.
The unshaded portion, basically.
The massive addition that we did.
Yeah.
All right.
But just in addition, it's like when you're going through and doing something like this, they want to see, as much information as possible, essentially. So, they want to see all your roof slopes. They want to see all your lighting, your smoke detectors, carbon monoxide. Yeah. So they want you to call out your GFI plugs as well.
Yeah, all GFIs are now required: bathrooms, kitchens, etc. Yeah. Functional pantries.
And, again, because there was an addition, we had a framing plan, we had a foundation plan, we had overall sections, detailed wall sections, elevations as well, showing the existing and the new.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that's changed over the last few months just blows my mind, because in the addition on this particular, in all projects, so any new construction that you build now requires an R49 insulation in your ceiling. Whereas if it's an existing structure, you pretty much, you're not really held to any standards. You just need to fill the cavity that's in that space. But they usually recommend an R38 R value.
Yeah.
So and you just need to keep that in mind when we're doing these sections. So we have a section for the old part of the house, the existing part, and also for the addition.
Yep. And then, listing out all the windows and doors and everything, what the sizes are, where they're located, and so forth. So we have a schedule for that.
And this is going to help you with your window order. So when you submit your plans to your window professional, they're going to be able to look at the window and door schedule also, just as a double check to make sure that this isn't a bathroom, so it needs to be tempered. This is or on a landing of a stairway, so this needs to be tempered. This is in a bedroom, so it needs to meet egress standards, which I believe is 5.7 square feet, I think. But all that should be verified with your window professional.
Yeah. So this is kind of a summary of a lot of the city stuff that we're talking about. Like Nick said, what's really happening now currently is they want everything up front and kind of approved beforehand. The process before was very different.
And honestly, I always change a little bit with my designs because I get inspired and I want to do something. Oh, this is a better idea. Let's do this. When you make those changes now, you have to submit a revision and they have to get that approved because many inspectors, even if you make it better, many inspectors will be like, it's not like it is on the floor plans.
Yeah,
we need to see that.
This is what we approved, and it differs from what we approved.
Right.
So
subtle changes are fine. Like if you need to build a false wall for your HVAC or something like that, that'll fly. There's certain things, and maybe it won't next week because honestly, things are changing weekly.
And it's like the thing is like yes, they're changing weekly. It's like the code is the code, the requirements are the requirements, right? So like we have an item up here that says required items are often revised. There's adjustments that are being done because the city is demanding more and more content. Basically, it's like everything that you're required to do, you're still required to do. They just want you to show it on the plans so that they can sign off on it, approve it, and it's included in, so it's like if you didn't include it, then they'll just come back to you and say, oh, you need to do this.
Right.
You need to show the GFI here.
So as an investor, or as a property owner or contractor, you're going to be submitting that application for your permit in the beginning of the project. And you're going to put down your design professional. So I get phone calls from the plans examiner all the time saying, hey, this is great, but what about this, or we need to change that or do that. And a lot of times they're actually pretty great sometimes. They'll make a note saying this needs to be changed, or they'll take the red stamp and they'll be like, this needs to happen, or show your carbon monoxide stuff, which we don't have that problem anymore because we do.
Yeah.
But things like that pop up, new things pop up.
Yeah, and sometimes it depends on who the reviewer is and how severe and how strict they're going to be holding you to the code. The list of other items up here, like all the critical items, these are all things that have come up like within the last
couple months.
6 months or so. So it's like we had comments come back about footer depths being clearly shown.
Frost line, 32 inches in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. Even legibility of notes. They wanted to, one of the reviewers, we've been using the same size text on all of our drawings, and then all of a sudden we get a comment back that text is too small, we want to see it bigger. Yeah. So then we had to, so it's like a lot of these little nitpicky things. Again, it's like you're required to do what you're required to do.
I'm waiting for the font size, or the font style.
The font style.
We need to change it also.
Yeah, no longer Arial is accepted. You got to do something else. So, but the GFI thing we already mentioned, right of way we mentioned, existing versus new. The only other thing is
code.
Referencing the code.
So now in our drawings, we are actually putting where like ROC dot whatever to show where you can find it in the 2019 residential code. It's actually quoting your specific circumstance based on what we're looking at.
Yeah. So, and we found all this stuff to be incredibly helpful, just getting it through and approved.
Yeah, before we go into this, the 2019, that's fine. 2019 residential code is specifically for standard construction. Now, a lot of us are using LVLs and in some cases steel beams. So an LVL or a steel beam is actually not considered standard construction. It's not rated in one of the charts that you're going to find in the code. So what we need to do is one of two things. You can hire an engineer to spec it, and they'll write up a sheet, put a stamp on it, and that's usually so I have a great engineer and he's about $125 an hour. He'll shoot out a letter in an hour, so it's super easy. But you can also avoid that. You can go directly to the manufacturer where you're buying your beam, and they'll give you a cut sheet because all these members are typically pre-engineered. So when you purchase this, 9 3/4 by whatever span, you're going to get a sheet with that says this member is meant to support this load in this, and you're giving the floor plans with that to your lumber supplier. So you'll be able to have that cut sheet in with your plans. So when the inspector comes to go through everything and they want to see the cut sheet for that specific member, you're good to go. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
I think that does.
Okay.
Basically, somebody else has already done the certification for that structure that's holding up the building, and when the inspector comes out,
I hate it all. I hate technology. I hate it all.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when the inspector comes out, he's able to sign off on it because all the information on the certification is there. So yeah,
Right.
I think you made sense.
All right, cool.
All right. So just kind of some parting thoughts. Again, this was kind of thoughtful floor plan design is what we were kind of striving to talk about. Just in general, we want to make sure that we're very strategic when we're approaching our design and drawings. So we find that we have the most success when we're listening to all parties.
Yep.
We're taking things into consideration from the client, from the contractor, from the realtor. And even from other designers.
Yeah.
So
so it's a good time to be in real estate. The market is awesome, but the most successful projects are the ones where everybody has a voice. So the designer is talking to the realtor, is talking to the contractor, is working with the client, and everybody's on the same page. I think that's going to bring you your best product.
Yeah, and if you're not doing volume, if you're doing like 1 or 2 houses a year,
You want to make sure your quality is up
Yeah.
and you're doing the right things. I mean, honestly, you want to always be doing the right things, but sometimes when you have 15 projects going at once, you have a very specific system in mind. I'm using this material for every house, I'm using this or that. If you do less, you can sometimes I have a little bit more fun with it. Every house that I do is different. So,
that gives you flexibility to be a little more creative, innovative, and do something different and unique.
right.
So
Exactly. But you need to do what's best for you. This is just our 2 cents about it.
Yeah, So
Is that it?
I think that's it. So
Oh, awesome.
questions if we have
So
time still.
can everyone see us, or are they just only seeing that?
I can hide this. I can do stop sharing.
Okay.
So now they should be able to see us.
All right. I can see everybody now. That was weird. Well, if anyone has any questions, we will be more than happy to answer them for you.
I know we kind
to
of
the best of our ability.
rush through everything. So
Yeah, Jim, I think this is the fastest presentation I've ever done in my life.
Oh, it was great. It was I loved it. I'm not really a flipper at all, but it's fascinating. I do have a question since you called on me. I'd like to know more about the functional pantry. I was a little bit confused. You mentioned a bathroom and a pantry at the same time, so I'm imagining like a can of beans on the back of the toilet. But knowing you, I have a feeling it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. But that was really interesting to hear. Can you talk about that? And sorry to monopolize this, but I also want to know what a dog bath is.
Yes. Okay. First of all, great question. So a lot of these kitchen spaces we're designing, we're seeing floating shelves, which is great. I love, especially in a smaller kitchen, if you have floating shelves and no uppers, it feels a lot more roomy. You get a lot more natural light in there. You can do you save money. You can, well, not if you buy tile and take it all the way up. It depends on your tile. But you can make it look a lot more luxurious, I think. And then in this pantry space, normally you just have a closet or something. Now you can have a little bit larger space that's going to have those uppers that you lost in the kitchen, and you're going to be able to add like maybe a little wet bar, a laundry area. It's essentially a space that you can throw in all the function of a kitchen with the exception of your major appliances, and really try to focus on the beauty and the wow factor of your actual kitchen, because you're taking a good amount of that function and putting it in an adjacent space. So yeah, in a lot of cases, if you don't have room for a half bath somewhere else, you can squeeze it in there. Basically, whatever you can fit, just
Well,
depending on the floor plan.
and when you say squeeze it in, what it, like you said, you're imagining a can of beans on the back of a toilet or something. It's not exactly that. I mean, it's more about it's directly adjacent to kind of the pantry area. It's not like actually in the pantry. They're not like in the same space, sharing the same space.
But we try to create an opening that it makes it feel like it's an extension of the kitchen. So
Right.
basically, it flows right into that space. And as far as a dog bath, Sarah and I are animal lovers, and don't even think about it as a dog bath. It's kind of replacing the utility sink. So you walk into your functional pantry where you have a bench and you hang your coats and stuff, and then you have this kind of, it's not necessarily a tub. It's actually this beautiful tiled sculpture that has a snake situation. You can rinse off your boots, you can clean stuff. It's kind of a little dump area that will serve as, and maybe replace your wash sink from a laundry room standpoint.
Yeah, and I know for me, it's like if that was in my house, when my son goes out when it rains and he comes back all muddy and splashing in the puddles, I would put him in that and just hose his feet off.
So
that would save us from cleaning
call
up
it a kid
afterwards.
bath.
Yeah,
Functional.
or a foot bath or something like that. Yeah. But like Nick said, it's like a utility
Just throw functional in front of it, and it'll answer all your questions.
That sounds cool. And I do mostly passive investing in apartments, and it's funny. A lot of the new amenities they're adding are things like a dog bath. A dog park is a must, but a lot of them have dog baths as well. So I never really understood exactly what that was. So it's pretty cool. Are there anybody else have questions? I know it's kind of hard to jump in on Zoom, but if you just unmute, we'll know that you're ready to go. It looks like Brian might have something to ask or add.
Yeah. Hey guys, I heard you mention about with COVID and people are looking for more kind of perhaps enclosed spaces. Most of the properties I renovate are older homes, and we tend to take walls down to, particularly with the kitchen and the living room or kitchen dining room area to open them up. Are you suggesting that we may want to rethink that? Because the open floor plan has been popular for a long, long time, and frankly, it's pretty expensive to do that. But now, in light of changing social norms and that kind of a thing, is that something that you're suggesting should be given some thought to, whether you should open that up or not?
I wouldn't go that far. So
I think that certain spaces definitely need to have a special relationship, like the kitchen and the living room, because that is your main source of hangout, essentially, in a household.
I think people are now starting to consider some different functions that they didn't necessarily have to consider before. And I think some of this will carry on even post-COVID, once we kind of get out of the back end of this, and if there's a vaccine and all that developed. I think people are still going to want these spaces that are multi-use, flexible. So it's not necessarily changing that whole open floor plan concept. I think that'll still kind of continue to be somewhat popular. But if a family member gets sick, you got to have somewhere to quarantine them, maybe. So it's like you're still going to have your common areas, but at the same time, you still have perhaps some flexible areas where you can kind of isolate them, section them off, or it would be a classroom space, or like Nick said, an office space dedicated for working from home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I look at it this way. You don't want to pay for a 4,000 square foot home. It's not realistic. And I think I love me a tiny house. Don't get me wrong, but I think we're going to be somewhere in the middle, and we're going to pack the functionality of a 4,000 square foot home into maybe a 2,000 square foot home. So we're just trying to lately I've been really into getting a bedroom on the first floor, like a master suite, and potentially a second one on the second floor. I just think that if you have some type of bedroom on the first floor, it can give you so many different options in terms of office, exercise, classroom, stuff like that. And then adding the technology in the space so it can be more of a flex space, so that whatever buyer ends up or renter ends up staying in the space, they can use it for what makes sense for their life.
Okay, I think Nate Roderick was saying he had a question.
I didn't. Yes, I was. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Just so your projects at this stage are, quite a bit more thorough than what we're typically doing, although this is really cool information because we want to be moving in that direction. But a question for you, if you have any rules of thumb, guidelines, things to consider, what we bump up against sometimes is, we're doing pretty, super thorough cosmetic stuff and then maybe a little bit of construction. What's some guidance about, where you really need to be making sure your permits are in order, when you should be pulling a general permit, when just like pull one for the roof or whatever? Just a little bit from your experience, any insight is great.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, if you're doing it does change. If you plan on bringing in a renter, which I know is your bread and butter, it's a little bit different. And you need to think in terms of 10 or 20 years from now. So does it make sense to tear it all out and make it brand new, so maybe you have a little bit less of a headache in dealing with your tenants for the next 10 or 20 years, so you're good to go. But what if it's in pretty decent shape and this is simply cosmetic? Well, you really don't need a permit to swap out a vanity, toilet, kitchen cabinets, light fixtures, anything like that. You don't need a general permit to upgrade your electrical service to 200 amp service if you only have 100. So the electrician can pull his own permit for a small job like that. So honestly, if you're not moving walls and not opening up, the kitchen to the living room, adding that island, if you have a pretty good layout in general, and a lot of these old houses were very well thought out when they were designed. They do have a lot of nice big window openings. They do have a lot of natural light, but they are compartmentalized. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Sectioned off.
Yeah. So honestly, it can function just fine for a rental. I would say get a second opinion, get a third opinion, bring in a design professional and have a conversation about it. It always helps just to bounce some ideas off somebody else, even if you don't take their advice. Because, you could have a house on the same street, but it's just a slightly different layout, and it will rent. This house A will rent in a second, whereas house B just doesn't, because you're gonna continually have to get a new tenant because maybe you have a weird roof line or just something just doesn't work right that makes somebody want to stay there for years and years and years. So let's put in a dormer, and if we're gonna add a dormer, we have to pull a permit for that. So then why don't we just go ahead and do this and do that for a few $1,000s more because you're doing it, and the house is gonna be vacant anyways. Let's knock it all out so you can get a premium rent in that space and make sure that it's filled constantly.
Cool, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Jim, can you go back to that more powerful light that was shining down on top of you? It gave your face an awesome glow.
I do have a little bit of glare in my office. That is true. But I like to be highlighted from behind. Any other questions for the guys or about my lighting?
Well, don't feel pressured. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to us at nestrs.com. That's Nestrs.
This is your company. Come on.
I always, whenever I say my company name, I always think of Tumblr. And we were sitting in a New York bar like 10 years ago when we were thinking this up, and it's like, oh, we're gonna be super trendy. It's gonna be awesome. And Tumblr's gone, and now people are like, so that there's no E? That's weird.
Well, this has been great. I have to admit, the only thing I don't like about the functional pantry is I keep the can opener in the kitchen, so if I need the beans while I'm in the bathroom, that seems a little bit complex. But that aside, this was great. Like I said, I'm not a flipper, but the plans you have and the ideas I think are fantastic. And part of the great thing about this group is that people like Nick and Paul are willing to chat with anybody and talk to people and help them out. So you have their information. We'll send it out also in a follow-up email. But if there's anybody that wants to contact you guys, they can go ahead and do that. Are there any other questions or comments before we sign off? The last thing I will say is we are having a big meeting next month, September 15th. It's going to be Coin 2.0. We're rolling out some new changes, and so we'll give you more information about that. But we're going to keep the core of Coin the same, and the mission we're just going to broaden it, make it a little bit more professional, hopefully, and keep things going as best we can. So with that, thank you guys for the presentation. That was fantastic. And
Thanks
if
for
no one
having us,
has,
Tim.
yeah, if no one has any other questions, we'll see you September 15th.
Thanks, guys. Good to see everybody.
Yep. See you guys.
Thank you all. Great job, guys.